There is a number that historians whisper about, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. If the Library of Alexandria had never been destroyed, some researchers estimate we would be living roughly 1,000 years in the future right now. Not 1,000 years older, 1,000 years ahead. That means the technology you would be holding in your hand today should have existed in the year 1025. It means the first human footprint on Mars might be 8 centuries old by now. And here is the part that genuinely keeps people awake at night. We know, with documented certainty, that at least one ancient Greek engineer built a working steam engine, and that a Greek astronomer correctly placed the sun at the center of the solar system roughly 1,800 years before the rest of the world caught up. Those ideas existed, they were written down, and then they were gone. Today we are going to rebuild the timeline where they survived, and I promise you the ending is not the utopia you are expecting, because by the time we reach the last few minutes of this video, I am going to show you why the smartest version of humanity might also have been the most dangerous, and why the real tragedy of Alexandria is something we are quietly repeating right now. But before we can burn down the wrong timeline, we have to correct something almost everyone believes. The Library of Alexandria did not burn down in a single dramatic night. That image, the one with the tower of flame and the scrolls curling into ash while a mob screams outside, is mostly a myth. The truth is so much worse. Alexandria did not die in a fire. It died from neglect. It was strangled slowly across 4 centuries, by budget cuts, by political purges, by a state that stopped caring about the people who worked inside it. Julius Caesar's fire in 48 BC damaged a warehouse district and probably destroyed a stockpile of scrolls, but the institution kept going. What actually killed it was a Roman emperor expelling foreign scholars. It was funding drying up. It was the salaries of the librarians quietly disappearing from the imperial budget. It was a slow, boring, bureaucratic death, and that is the detail nobody tells you, because a fire makes a better story than an accountant. So when we imagine the world where Alexandria survives, we are not imagining a world where someone put out a fire. We are imagining a world where a civilization simply decided that knowledge was worth paying for. Hold on to that thought, because it is going to come back at the end of this video, and it is going to hit differently. Now, what was actually in there? This is where it stops being a story about a building and starts being a story about everything we lost. The library was not a library in the way you are picturing it. It was the world's first research institution, a full campus with lecture halls, dissection rooms, an observatory, a zoo, and a policy so aggressive it borders on piracy. Every ship that docked at Alexandria was searched, not for weapons, for books. Any scroll found on board was confiscated, copied by the library's scribes, and here is the beautiful part. The library kept the original and gave the owner back the copy. They were building a complete backup of human knowledge, and they did not particularly care whose feelings they hurt doing it. At its peak, estimates run somewhere between 40,000 and 400,000 scrolls, and the ones we know about are staggering. Aristarchus of Samos wrote that the Earth orbits the Sun and that the stars are other suns unimaginably far away. That is not a rough guess. That is the correct answer, delivered 18 centuries before Copernicus was born, and then buried so thoroughly that Copernicus had to rediscover it from scratch. Eratosthenes, the library's own chief librarian, calculated the circumference of the Earth using nothing but shadows, a well, and a man paid to walk in a straight line. He was off by less than 2%. 2% using shadows. Herophilus was performing human dissections and correctly identified the brain, not the heart, as the center of the nervous system. And Hero of Alexandria built a device called the Aeolipile, a sealed sphere that spun on its axis under its own steam pressure. A working steam turbine. In the 1st century, So let me ask the question that this entire video is built on. What happens if that momentum never stops? Because in our timeline, Hero's steam engine was treated as a novelty, a party trick, a toy for opening temple doors dramatically to impress worshippers. Nobody scaled it up, nobody attached it to anything that mattered. But in the surviving timeline, Alexandria's engineers do not stop, because there is an institution, a budget, and a room full of rivals to impress. And once you attach steam power to water, everything changes with a speed that is genuinely difficult to comprehend. The first real application is not a train, it is a pump. Mines flood constantly, and a steam pump lets you dig deeper for metal than any civilization ever has. Deeper mines mean more iron. More iron means better tools, which means more precise machinery, which means better engines. That is not a straight line, that is a spiral, and it accelerates. Within 2 generations, Roman Alexandria has mechanized grain mills. Within 4, it has powered looms. And the textile industry that took Britain until the 1760s to build is running on the Nile in the 2nd century. The Roman road network, already the finest in the world, gets rails. Now picture that. Steam locomotives running from Alexandria to Antioch on Roman rails, carrying grain and legions and, most importantly, letters. Because the thing that actually made the modern world was not the engine, it was the speed at which one idea could reach another idea. And that brings us to the invention that matters more than the steam engine, the one I promised you at the start. It is not a machine at all. It is the printing press. The library's entire operating model was copying, and copying by hand is agonizingly slow, which means every scroll is fragile and rare. But the Romans already had the 2 components. They had presses, used for wine and olive oil, and they had movable metal type in the form of stamps and seals. Nobody put them together because nobody had a reason to. Give Alexandria 3 more centuries of institutional obsession with copying texts, and someone, inevitably, gets tired of hand cramps and bolts a seal press to a wine press. And the moment that happens, knowledge stops being fragile. That is the real turning point, not steam, redundancy, because a printed idea cannot be killed by a fire, or a budget cut, or an emperor in a bad mood. In the surviving timeline, by the year 400, a discovery made in Alexandria is in Britain within a year, and in 10,000 copies, the Dark Ages, that long medieval slowdown where classical knowledge sat locked in monasteries in a handful of decaying copies, simply cannot happen, because you cannot lose a book that exists 10,000 times. Let us push it further, because this is where it gets genuinely strange. Follow the medicine. Herophilus was already dissecting bodies and mapping nerves in the 3rd century BC. In our timeline, that work stopped, and human dissection became taboo for well over 1,000 years. In the surviving timeline, it never stops, and anatomy compounds the same way engineering does. Now add the other Alexandrian invention nobody expects: glass lenses. Alexandria was one of the great glass-making centers of the ancient world, and grinding lenses is not a technological leap, it is a craft skill. Combine a culture of lens grinding with a culture of dissection, and you get the microscope, potentially 1,000 years early. And the moment someone points a microscope at dirty water and sees things swimming in it, germ theory arrives. Think about what that actually means. The plague of Justinian, which killed perhaps 30 million people, arrives in a world that understands contagion, quarantine, and clean water. The Black Death, which erased 1/3 of Europe, might never have a Europe to erase in that form at all, and a civilization that does not lose half its population every few centuries does not just survive. It compounds. Population, literacy, and specialization all stack, and every one of those is fuel. So the utopia is obvious, right? Steam by the 2nd century, print by the 4th, germ theory by the 6th, electricity somewhere in the medieval period, spaceflight while Europe was still building cathedrals. It is a beautiful timeline, and I think it would have been a bloodbath. Here is the uncomfortable part. Technology does not arrive in a moral vacuum. It arrives in the hands of whoever is already in power, and in the ancient Mediterranean, that was an empire built on conquest and a workforce built on slavery. Give Rome a steam engine, and you have not given it a gift. You have given it an accelerant. Roman military logistics were already the most efficient on Earth. Add rail, and there is no meaningful limit to how far a legion can be sustained. Add industrial metallurgy, and you have mass-produced weapons 2,000 years early, wielded by a state with no concept of human rights, no Geneva Convention, and an economy that treated a third of its people as equipment. The colonization of the rest of the world does not happen in the 1500s with sailing ships. It happens in the 200s with steamships and repeating weapons against civilizations with no chance whatsoever. And the environmental math is worse. Our industrial revolution has warmed the planet in about 250 years. Start that clock in the year 150, and you are looking at nearly 2 millennia of coal smoke poured into an atmosphere by people with no science of climate and no reason to look for one. The surviving timeline might not give us Mars colonies, it might give us a burnt planet with a Roman flag on it. And now the twist I have been holding back, the one that historians actually argue about, and it might be the most interesting idea in this entire video. There is a serious case that the library's survival would have changed almost nothing, because ancient Mediterranean economies ran on slave labor, and slavery is the single most effective innovation killer ever devised. Labor-saving machines only get built when labor is expensive. When labor is free, why would you fund an engine? There is a story, possibly apocryphal, that an inventor showed the Emperor Vespasian a device for moving heavy columns cheaply, and Vespasian rewarded him, then refused to use it, asking how he was supposed to feed the common people if machines did their work. Whether or not that specific conversation happened, the logic behind it absolutely did. Hero's steam engine was not ignored because the Romans were stupid. They were not stupid. It was ignored because in an economy with abundant enslaved labor, a machine that replaces workers is a solution to a problem nobody in charge actually had. So the real bottleneck was never the library. It was the incentive structure. And that means the true what if is not what if the scrolls survived. It is what if the ancient world had a reason to use them. Which brings us all the way back to the beginning, and to the thing I said would hit differently. Alexandria was not killed by a fire. It was killed by a slow decision that maintaining knowledge was not worth the cost. And that should feel deeply, uncomfortably familiar, because we are doing it right now. We are living through what archivists call the digital dark age. Websites vanish at a staggering rate. Research data sits on formats no current machine can read. Entire platforms holding a generation's worth of writing, photographs, and conversation get switched off by a corporate decision, and everything on them evaporates in an afternoon. We are producing more information than any civilization in history and preserving less of it than a medieval monastery. The scrolls of our era are not burning. They are quietly failing to load. So the honest lesson of Alexandria is not about a fire at all. It is that a civilization's knowledge does not vanish in a single dramatic catastrophe. It vanishes when a society stops paying to keep it. The people of Alexandria did not think they were living at the end of anything. They thought they had time. So here is what I actually want to know from you. If you could pull one single scroll out of that library before the lights went out, what would you want it to be? The complete works of a lost philosopher, the medical texts, the star charts, or something we do not even have a name for because it was erased so completely we never knew it existed? Tell me in the comments, because that answer says more about what you value than almost anything else you could say. And whatever you choose, remember the real lesson. The fire is never the thing that kills a library. Indifference is.